Have you ever found yourself in a store, choosing one brand of coffee over another because it was fair trade? Or, maybe actively avoiding a company because of a headline you saw? Well, it turns out those little choices are actually part of this huge global trend. Today, we're going to dive into the research on what's called political consumerism and uncover the really surprising forces that are turning our shopping habits into powerful political statements.
So that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Is your shopping cart the new ballot box? It sounds a little dramatic, I know, but for more and more people, especially young people, the marketplace is becoming the go-to arena for political action. And this explainer is all about digging into the research to figure out why.
Okay, so let's put a name to this. The official term we're working with here is political consumerism. And what it boils down to is this. It's using your money, your buying power, to make a statement about the issues you care about, whether that's politics, ethics, or the environment. It basically turns the everyday act of shopping into something with real political weight.
Now, this whole thing really breaks down into two main actions. You've definitely heard of a boycott. That's when you refuse to buy something to punish a company for doing things you don't agree with. But then there's its opposite, which is called a buycott. And that's when you go out of your way to buy from a company to reward them for behavior you think is positive.
All right, section 1, voting with your wallet. So, how big of a deal is this really? And who's leading the charge? Let's take a look.
So, get this. This slide shows a really startling difference. According to the data, a whopping 38% of young people in the UK are out there boycotting, actively buying products to make a point. Now, compare that to Greece, where it's only 8%. That is a massive gap, right? So you have to ask yourself, what is going on here?
And that leads us right into our second section, what the research calls the political apathy myth. The easy answer would be to just say, oh, young people just don't care about politics anymore. But the research shows that's not it at all. Something way more complicated is happening under the surface.
And this quote from a focus group in the UK wow, it absolutely nails the real feeling here. This isn't about rejecting democracy. It's about a deep frustration with how democracy is working right now. These young people don't want to scrap the system, they just really want it to be better.
So if it's not apathy, what is it? Well, Section 3 points to a hidden force that the researchers say is behind all of this: neoliberalism. They argue it's this huge ideology that's reshaping our entire world, from how our governments work all the way down to the supermarket aisle. So what on earth is neoliberalism, according to this study? Think of it as an idea that wants to remake all of society in the image of the free market. It's all about pushing for market-based solutions to problems and putting a huge emphasis on our individual responsibility, which often means shifting that responsibility away from the government and onto us.
And the research says this creates three really big shifts in how we see the world. First, power starts to move away from us, the people, and towards the market. Second, our very identity begins to shift, from thinking of ourselves as a citizen to seeing ourselves more as a consumer. And finally, responsibility for fixing things moves from the state to the individual.
Okay, this brings us to the absolute core idea of the research here in Section 4, the push and pull effect. The argument is that neoliberalism creates this powerful two-way street that completely changes how young people take action in the world. So here's how it works. On one side, you have a push effect. Young people feel pushed away from traditional politics because they see it as broken, ineffective, and frankly, untrustworthy. But at the exact same time, there's a pull effect. They're pulled into the marketplace, which feels way more direct and responsive, a place where their individual choices actually seem to matter.
So let's zoom in on those push factors. Why does politics feel so broken to them? Well, the focus groups kept bringing up a few things. One, they feel like politicians are basically powerless against these giant economic forces. Two, they see politicians as self-serving. And maybe most importantly, they just don't feel like their voices are being heard or represented at all. So then, what about the pull factors? What makes the market feel so empowering? Well, first off, there's this really strong belief that your choices as a consumer can actually make a difference. And that's backed up by the fact that there are so many ethical products out there now. Plus, it's never been easier to look up info on a company and see what they're really about. The market feels like a place you can have an impact. Now, let's see how this whole push and pull theory actually plays out in the real world. In Section 5, we're putting the UK and Greece side by side. It's the same force, neoliberalism, at work, but with totally different results.
Just listen to this quote from someone in the UK. It perfectly captures that strong pull effect we were talking about.
You can just hear the confidence, right? This sense that there's endless choice, that the market gives you all the tools you need to make ethical decisions.
And now, listen to the complete opposite from a participant in Greece. The feeling is total skepticism. They see all that variety as just an illusion of choice because they know it's all controlled by a handful of giant corporations. For them, the push away from a corrupt system is way stronger than any pull from the market.
This table just lays it all out crystal clear. In the UK, the main driver is the pull into the market. That leads to high confidence and more positive actions, like boycotting. But in Greece, the main driver is the push away from politics, and that's fueled by deep distrust and skepticism, leading to more negative actions, like boycotting.
So here's the bottom line. Even though young people in both countries are using their wallets to make a statement, they're doing it for completely different reasons. For the youth in Greece, it's an action born out of total distrust in the state. But for those in the UK, it's an action born out of confidence in the market.
And this all brings us to our final section. Citizen or consumer? We really have to ask, what happens when the lines between being a citizen and being a shopper get this blurry?
What this research is really telling us is that those two distinct roles, citizen and consumer, they're starting to merge. They're blending together to create this new hybrid identity, the political consumer. This is someone who sees the checkout counter as just another place to stand up for their values.
Which leaves us all with one last, pretty heavy question to think about. If our main way of feeling powerful, of creating change in the world, is through the things we buy, what does that actually mean for the future of democracy itself?